The alarm bells rang through the great halls of the Galactic Council. Red lights flashed on every wall as urgent messages poured in from across the galaxy. Something terrible was happening, and it was happening fast. Ambassador Kethvar rushed into the emergency meeting room. His blue skin was pale with worry, and his forearms shook as he held the data tablets. Around him, hundreds of other beings from different worlds filled the massive chamber. Some had fur, others had scales, and a few were made of pure energy. But they all had one thing in common. They were scared. "The reports keep coming in," announced Speaker Zolthak from the central platform. His voice echoed through the room using the translation devices. "The Zephyrian hegemony has attacked 17 star systems in the last 3 days." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Different languages mixed together as the translation systems worked overtime. Kethvar looked at his tablet again, hoping the numbers had changed. They had not. If anything, they were worse. The Zephyrians came from the far edge of the galaxy. For thousands of years, they had stayed in their own territory. Nobody bothered them, and they bothered nobody. But 3 months ago, something had changed. Their ships began moving toward Council space. At first, the Council thought it was just exploration. They were wrong. "Show them the battle footage," Speaker Zolthak commanded. The lights dimmed, and a massive hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed the Kepler system, one of the first places the Zephyrians had attacked. Council warships, sleek and silver, faced off against the enemy fleet. The Zephyrian ships looked wrong. They were not built like normal spacecraft. Instead, they seemed to be grown like living things, black and twisted, with parts that moved and changed even during battle. When the Council ships fired their energy weapons, the Zephyrian vessels absorbed the attacks. Worse, they seemed to learn from each shot. "Watch this part carefully," the speaker said. In the hologram, a Council battleship fired its main cannon. The blast hit a Zephyrian cruiser and damaged it badly. But within minutes, something amazing and horrible happened. The damaged parts began to heal themselves. The ship's armor changed color and texture. When the Council ship fired again with the same weapon, the blast bounced off harmlessly. "They adapt," whispered Admiral Torgan from the Centauri Defense Force. "Every time we hit them, they become stronger against that type of attack." The hologram showed more of the battle. One by one, the Council ships were destroyed or forced to retreat. The Zephyrian fleet barely seemed damaged. After the fight, strange machines came out of the enemy ships. They built massive structures on the planets below. "What are those?" asked Counselor Ythmora. She was very old, even by her species standards, and had seen many wars. "We don't know," the speaker replied. "Our scouts report that they're taking the local population into these buildings." Nobody comes back out. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. More reports came in during the meeting. The Hyades cluster had fallen. The mining worlds of Sector 7 were under attack. Each battle followed the same pattern. The Zephyrians would arrive, learn from the defenders' weapons, and then crush all resistance. Their biomechanical ships seemed almost impossible to stop. "How many refugees are fleeing toward core systems?" asked Ambassador Kethvar. "Over 200 million so far," came the reply. "And that number grows every hour." The economic impact was already being felt. Trade routes were shut down. Entire industries had stopped working as their workers fled for safety. The Council's military was stretched thin, trying to protect the most important worlds. "We need to consider all our options," said Admiral Torgan. "Maybe it's time to ask for help from species outside the Council." "Like who?" demanded Counselor Ythmora. "We are the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. If we cannot stop them, who can?" There was a long pause. Finally, a young aide raised his hand nervously. He was from the diplomatic corps, barely old enough to attend these meetings. What about the humans?" he asked quietly. The entire chamber fell silent. It was as if someone had sucked all the air out of the room. Hundreds of eyes in dozens of different colors and shapes turned to stare at the young aide. He immediately regretted speaking. "That is not an option," said Speaker Zolthak firmly. "The humans are not to be involved in this conflict. That is final." "But sir," the aide continued, his voice shaking, "they are members of the Council. Don't they have a right to know about the threat?" "They will be informed for diplomatic purposes only," the speaker replied. "Under no circumstances are human military forces to be involved. Is that clear?" Everyone nodded, though many looked confused. The humans had joined the Council 50 years ago. Their technology was impressive, and their ships were well designed. Why wouldn't they want human help? Kethavar knew the answer. He had been on the council during the Cerberus conflict 25 years ago. He had seen the classified reports. He knew what happened when humans went to war. The meeting continued for hours. Plans were made to evacuate more civilians. The military discussed new tactics to try against the adaptive Zephyrian technology. Resources were allocated for refugee camps, but everyone knew they were just buying time. As the session ended, Kethvar walked through the corridors with Counselor Yithmora. She had been unusually quiet during the discussions. "You remember the Cerberus incident, don't you?" she asked him. "I try not to," he replied. "Perhaps we should review those files again," she suggested, "just to remind ourselves why we're so afraid of our own allies." Kethvar stopped walking. "Yithmora, I've seen those records. What the humans did to end that conflict. It still gives me nightmares. And that was a small border dispute. This is different, yes," she agreed. "This is much worse. The question is, which scares you more, the Zephyrians or the humans?" As they parted ways, Kethvar looked out a window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian fleet was growing stronger with each victory, and somewhere else in a small yellow star system, the humans were probably watching and waiting. He shivered and walked away quickly. 3 months had passed since the first Zephyrian attack. The war was going badly for the Galactic Council. Very badly. Admiral Torgan stood in the command center of the Council's main military station. Around him, holographic displays showed the current state of the galaxy. Red dots marked Zephyrian-controlled systems. There were far too many of them now. "How many systems have we lost this week?" he asked his aide. 17, sir. And the Zephyrians are moving faster now. Their ships are adapting to our weapons before we even use them." Torgan nodded grimly. The enemy had learned from every battle. Their biomechanical technology was beyond anything the Council had ever seen. Each time the Council's scientists developed a new weapon, the Zephyrians found a way to counter it within days. The refugee situation was getting worse too. Entire species were fleeing their homeworlds. The lucky ones made it to Council space. The unlucky ones were caught by Zephyrian forces and taken to those mysterious facilities. Nobody knew what happened inside those buildings, but the screaming could be heard for kilometers. "Sir," the aide said nervously, "the Council's main computer has finished its analysis of the war. And if current trends continue, the Zephyrians will control the entire galaxy within 2 years. Maybe less." Torgan closed his eyes. He had hoped the computer would find some reason for optimism. Instead, it confirmed his worst fears. "Call an emergency meeting," he ordered. "Full Council session. Classification level Alpha." The emergency session began 6 hours later. The Council chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of worlds. The mood was dark. Everyone knew why they were here. Speaker Zolthak didn't waste time with pleasantries. "The situation is critical. Our military forces are losing every major engagement. Our economy is collapsing under the refugee crisis. We need new strategies." "What new strategies?" demanded Counselor Grixtal from the Vegan Republic. "We've tried everything. Conventional weapons, energy shields, tactical retreats, massed assaults. Nothing works against these creatures. Maybe we should consider surrender," suggested someone from the back of the chamber. The suggestion caused an uproar. Angry voices filled the air as the translation system struggled to keep up. The idea of surrendering the entire galaxy to an unknown enemy was too much for most representatives to accept. "Order," shouted the speaker. "We are not here to discuss surrender. We are here to find a way to win." Old Counselor Yithmora stood up slowly. At her age, just standing was an effort, but everyone fell silent when she rose. "I have been thinking about our options," she said in her creaky voice. "There is one possibility we have not discussed." "What possibility?" asked the speaker. "The humans." Again, the chamber fell silent. It was becoming a pattern whenever anyone mentioned Earth. "Counselor Yithmora," the speaker said carefully, "we have already decided that human involvement is not acceptable." "I know what we decided," she replied, "but I also know what we're facing. I've reviewed the files from the Cerberus conflict. I know what the humans are capable of." She activated her personal hologram display. Classified documents appeared in the air above her seat. Most of the council members had never seen these files before. 25 years ago, the Cerberus system was in chaos. 3 different species were fighting over mining rights. The conflict had lasted for 8 years. Millions had died. The Council tried to negotiate peace, but nothing worked. The hologram showed star charts of the Cerberus system. Multiple fleets from different species were positioned around various planets. Finally, we asked the humans for help. They had just joined the Council and wanted to prove themselves. They sent one ship to end an 8-year war. What happened? Asked a young representative who had not been on the Council during those events. Ythmora's expression grew dark. The human ship arrived and broadcast a message to all forces in the system. They said they had 48 hours to end the conflict peacefully or the humans would end it for them. And the 3 species ignored the warning. They thought one human ship was a joke. They kept fighting. The hologram changed to show what happened next. It was not pleasant. The humans didn't attack the fleets, Ythmora continued. They attacked the asteroids the species were fighting over. But they didn't just destroy the asteroids. They turned them into weapons. The display showed human ships using gravity manipulation technology to hurl massive rocks at incredible speeds. But that wasn't the worst part. They had studied the mining operations, Ythmora explained. They knew exactly which asteroids contained radioactive materials. When those rocks hit the warships, they didn't just cause explosions. They created radioactive clouds that made entire sections of space uninhabitable. That's a war crime, whispered someone. No, Ythmora replied. The humans checked all galactic laws before they acted. Technically, they were just moving asteroids. The fact that it destroyed 3 fleets and ended the war was just a side effect. But the radioactive contamination will clear up in about 200 years, Ythmora finished. The humans calculated it very precisely, long enough to make sure no one could resume fighting over those resources, but not long enough to be permanent. The chamber was quiet as everyone absorbed this information. There's more, Ythmora continued. After the battle, human scientists approached the survivors. They offered to share technology that could clean up the radiation. All 3 species had to sign permanent peace agreements and allow human monitoring of the system. They planned the whole thing, Admiral Torgon realized. From the beginning, Ythmora confirmed. The humans didn't just end the war. They made sure it could never restart. They turned a conflict zone into a peaceful trading hub in less than a week. And that's why we don't want their help now, asked a confused representative. Speaker Zolthak answered that question. Because their solution was terrifying. They treated an 8-year war like a simple engineering problem. They calculated exactly how much destruction was needed to achieve their goals and then applied it with surgical precision. The humans don't fight battles, Ythmora added. They solve problems, and their solutions tend to be very permanent. The debate that followed lasted for 18 hours. Representatives argued about the risks of asking for human help versus the certainty of defeat without it. Some wanted to contact Earth immediately. Others insisted that humanity was more dangerous than the Zephyrians. Finally, a vote was called. The results were clear. 847 representatives voted to continue fighting without human military involvement. 23 abstained from voting. 0 voted to request human military aid. It's decided then, announced Speaker Zolthak. We will send a message to Earth thanking them for their offer of humanitarian aid. We will also respectfully request that human military forces remain in their own system during this conflict. As the session ended, Admiral Torgon approached Ythmora. Do you think we made the right choice? He asked. The old counselor looked tired. I think we made the only choice we could live with. The question is whether it's a choice we can survive. Across the galaxy, the Zephyrian fleet continued its advance. Their biomechanical ships grew stronger with each battle. And in a small system called Sol, human military leaders watched the war with growing concern. Admiral Sarah Chen sat in her office aboard Luna Station, looking at reports that made her stomach turn. The war between the Galactic Council and the Zephyrian hegemony was getting worse every day. Much worse. She picked up the latest intelligence briefing and read it again, hoping she had missed something that would make the situation less terrible. She had not. Computer, show me the refugee movement patterns for the last month, she said. The wall screen lit up with a map of local space. Streams of red dots showed refugee ships fleeing from Zephyrian territory. Most were heading toward Council core worlds, but many were coming toward human space. How many refugee requests have we received this week? Chen asked her aide, Lieutenant Commander Park. Over 3,000, Admiral, and that's just the official ones. Our border stations report twice as many ships asking for emergency shelter. Chen rubbed her temples. The human colonies near Council Space were doing their best to help, but they were getting overwhelmed. The stories the refugees told were horrifying. "What's the latest from the Kepler Defense Corps?" she asked. "They're preparing defensive positions along our border with Council Space. General Morrison thinks we might have Zephyrian scouts in our territory already." Chen wasn't surprised. The Zephyrians seem to be everywhere these days. Their biomechanical ships could change their appearance, making them almost impossible to detect until they attacked. And what does Earth Command say about direct involvement? President Martinez authorized defensive preparations only. We're not supposed to engage unless directly attacked. Chen understood the official position, but she also knew her commander-in-chief. President Martinez had been a soldier before entering politics. She had seen what happened when good people stood by and watched atrocities unfold. The current policy wouldn't last much longer. "Admiral," Park said carefully, "there's something else. Captain David Park from the Reconnaissance Division wants to speak with you. He says it's urgent." Chen knew Captain Park by reputation. He commanded the Wanderer, one of humanity's most advanced scout ships. If Park thought something was urgent, it probably was. "Send him in." Captain Park entered the office a few minutes later. He looked tired and worried. His uniform was wrinkled like he had been sleeping in it. "Admiral, I need to report what my ship found during our patrol near the Altair system." "Go ahead." "Captain." Park activated his personal data pad, and a hologram appeared above Chen's desk. It showed a Zephyrian-controlled planet from orbit. "This is Altair 7, one of the first worlds the Zephyrians conquered. We managed to get close enough to scan the surface without being detected." "What did you find?" "Those structures the Zephyrians build on every world they capture? We found out what they're for." The hologram zoomed in to show massive installations covering the planet's surface. They looked like a cross between factories and medical facilities. "The Zephyrians are taking prisoners, Admiral. Lots of them. But they're not killing them right away." "What are they doing?" Park's expression darkened. "They're experimenting on them. Our sensors detected thousands of different life signs inside those buildings. But they're not normal life signs. The Zephyrians are somehow mixing the genetic material of different species." Chen felt sick. "They're creating hybrids. Worse than that. They're trying to create super soldiers by combining the best traits of every species they capture. Enhanced strength from one species, advanced intelligence from another, natural armor from a third." "My God. How many prisoners are we talking about? On that one planet? Maybe 50 million. And Admiral, that's just one world. They've conquered hundreds." Chen stared at the hologram for a long moment. The scale of the atrocity was almost impossible to comprehend. Millions of beings were being used as test subjects for some twisted biological weapons program. "Captain, I want you to continue your reconnaissance missions. But be careful. If the Zephyrians detect you..." "I understand, Admiral. But there's something else. During our last mission, we intercepted some of their communications. They're not just planning to conquer the galaxy. They want to reshape every species in it according to their design." After Captain Park left, Chen sat alone in her office for a long time. She thought about the oath she had taken when she joined the military. Protect humanity, defend the innocent, uphold justice. The current situation was testing all of those principles. Her computer chimed with an incoming message from Earth. It was from President Martinez herself. "Admiral Chen, I've been reviewing the intelligence reports from the Galactic War. I want your honest assessment of the situation." Chen activated the secure communication channel. President Martinez appeared on her screen, looking as concerned as Chen felt. "Madam President, the situation is worse than our public reports indicate. The Zephyrians aren't just conquering territory. They're committing genocide on a galactic scale." "I was afraid of that. What do you think we should do?" "Officially, we should continue following our current policy of non-interference. Unofficially, we should be preparing for war." President Martinez was quiet for a moment. "Admiral, I've received a message from the Galactic Council. They're specifically requesting that we stay out of this conflict." "Yes, ma'am. I've seen that message. Do you know why they're so afraid of our involvement?" Chen had studied the classified files from the Cerberus conflict. She knew exactly why the Council was nervous about human military intervention. "They think we're too dangerous, ma'am. They're worried that our methods might be worse than the disease." "And are they right?" Chen thought about that question carefully. Human military doctrine was different from other species. Where other civilizations saw war as a series of battles, humans saw it as a problem to be solved permanently. Their solutions tended to be very thorough. Madam President, if we get involved in this war, we won't just push the Zephyrians back. We'll eliminate them as a threat forever. The Council knows that, and it scares them. But if we don't get involved, then billions of innocent beings will die or worse. And eventually the Zephyrians will come for us too. President Martinez nodded. Keep preparing for defensive operations, Admiral. And keep monitoring the situation. If things get much worse, yes, ma'am. I understand. After the call ended, Chen looked out the window at Earth below. Her home world looked peaceful from space. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. It was hard to believe that somewhere out there an entire galaxy was at war. Her computer chimed again. This time it was a priority message from Captain Park. Admiral, the Zephyrians just broke through the Council's main defensive line. They're heading for the core worlds now. At their current speed, they'll reach Alteria Prime within 2 weeks. Chen closed her eyes. Alteria Prime was the capital world of one of the Council's founding species. If it fell, the galactic government would probably collapse. She opened a new file on her computer and began typing orders. President Martinez had authorized defensive preparations. It was time to make those preparations very thorough indeed. Across human space, military commanders received new instructions. Fleet positions were adjusted. Weapons systems were tested. Intelligence gathering operations were expanded. Officially, humanity was still neutral in the Galactic War, but Admiral Chen knew that wouldn't last much longer. The news reached the Galactic Council at 1430 Galactic Standard Time. Alteria Prime, one of the oldest and most important worlds in Council space, had fallen to the Zephyrian hegemony. Ambassador Kethvar read the report 3 times before he could believe it. The planet that had helped found the Council over 1,000 years ago was now under enemy control. The siege had lasted only 6 hours. How is that possible? He asked the military briefer. Alteria had the best defenses in the galaxy. Had, sir. Past tense. The Zephyrians used a new type of weapon, something our sensors had never seen before. The briefer activated the holographic display. It showed the final moments of the battle for Alteria Prime. Council defense platforms, massive structures that had protected the planet for centuries, simply dissolved. One moment they were there. The next they were gone. What happened to them? We think the Zephyrians developed some kind of molecular disintegration beam. It breaks down the atomic bonds in any material it touches. Kethvar felt sick. If the Zephyrians could dissolve matter itself, no defense would be able to stop them. How many survived? We don't know, sir. The population of Alteria Prime was 12 billion. Refugee ships managed to evacuate maybe 2 million before the planet fell. That meant over 11 billion beings were now in Zephyrian hands. Kethvar didn't want to think about what that meant, given what they had learned about the enemy's experiments. There's more bad news, sir. The Zephyrians are building something on Alteria Prime, something big. The hologram changed to show orbital images of the conquered planet. Strange structures were growing from the surface, reaching up toward space like twisted metal trees. Our analysts think it's some kind of super facility, much larger than anything they've built before. Kethvar stared at the images. Whatever the Zephyrians were building, it was massive, and it was growing fast. How long do we have before they attack another core world? Based on their previous patterns? Maybe 2 weeks, 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, another ancient civilization might be extinct. That evening, Kethvar met secretly with a small group of other council members. They gathered in a private room far from the main chambers, away from official recording devices. We can't continue like this, said Councillor Rixmar from the Vegan Republic. Every day we delay costs millions of lives. The official policy is clear, replied Councillor Xantar. No human involvement. The vote was nearly unanimous. The vote was based on fear, not logic, argued Ythmora. She looked even older than usual, as if the weight of the war was aging her rapidly. We're so afraid of what the humans might do that we're willing to let our entire civilization die. You saw the files from Cerberus, Xantar reminded her. The humans solved that conflict by making it impossible for anyone to fight there ever again. What if they decide the best way to stop this war is to eliminate both sides? The humans aren't monsters, Kethvar said quietly. I've studied their history. Yes, they can be ruthless in war, but they protect civilians. They follow rules. They try to minimize suffering. Try being the important word, Xantar replied. Rixmar leaned forward. I've been in contact with some of the refugee groups. They're telling stories about the Zephyrian facilities that make me sick. Mass experimentation, genetic manipulation. They're turning people into things. We know, Ythmora said sadly. The question is, what are we going to do about it? The group sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Kethvar spoke. What if we sent an unofficial message to Earth? Not a formal request for military aid, but a private communication asking for advice. That could be seen as treason, Xantar warned. Letting our civilization die could also be seen as treason, Kethvar replied. After much debate, they agreed on a carefully worded message. It would be sent through back channels with no official council authorization. The message was simple. Unofficial request for limited human advisory support. Extreme discretion required. The message was transmitted to Earth at Oro 2:15 Galactic Standard Time. The response came back within 4 hours, which surprised everyone. Advisory support authorized. USSC retribution en route with humanitarian mission parameters. That was fast, Rixmar observed. Too fast, Xantar said suspiciously. How did they respond so quickly? It's like they were already planning this. Kethvar had the same thought, but he kept it to himself. Maybe the humans had been preparing for this possibility. Maybe they had been waiting for someone from the council to ask for help. 3 days later, Captain Park's reconnaissance ship, Wanderer, detected something that changed everything. During a routine scan of a Zephyrian facility, his sensors picked up strange energy signatures. Admiral, you need to see this, Park reported to Admiral Chen via secure communication. The data he transmitted showed the inside of one of the Zephyrian experiment facilities. What they saw there was worse than their worst nightmares. They're not just experimenting on prisoners, Park explained. They're trying to create a hybrid species that combines human intelligence with Zephyrian biomechanical adaptability. How do they have human genetic material? Chen asked. They captured some of our colonists from the border worlds, maybe a few hundred people. But Admiral, if they succeed in creating these hybrids, Chen understood immediately. The combination of human creativity and problem-solving ability with Zephyrian adaptive technology would create super soldiers that no known force could stop. Captain, I want you to verify this information independently. If you're right, this changes everything. Already done, Admiral. I sent a stealth probe into their facility. The images it transmitted are disturbing. Chen reviewed the data Park had sent. The images showed beings that were clearly part human, but altered in ways that were both fascinating and horrifying. Enhanced muscles, metallic skin, eyes that glowed with artificial light. How many of these hybrids have they created? Maybe 1,000 so far. But they're accelerating the program. Our projections suggest they could have 1 million hybrid soldiers within 6 months. Chen made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Captain Park, I'm upgrading your mission parameters. This is now classified as a species-level threat. Return to base immediately. Yes, ma'am. Admiral, what does species-level threat mean? Chen's expression was grim. It means the Zephyrians have just made this personal. Across human space, secret military bases received new orders. Ships that had been on defensive patrol were repositioned. Weapons that had been in maintenance were suddenly operational again. Intelligence networks that had been monitoring the situation began active operations. The USSC retribution was indeed en route to Council space, as promised. But what the Council didn't know was that 17 other human vessels were also moving toward the war zone. They had been positioned for weeks waiting for authorization to act. Admiral Chen opened a secure channel to President Martinez. Madam President, we have confirmation that the Zephyrians are experimenting on human prisoners. I'm requesting authorization to implement the Omega Protocol. President Martinez was quiet for a long moment. The Omega Protocol was humanity's most extreme military doctrine. It was only used when the survival of the human species was at stake. Are you sure, Admiral? Yes, ma'am. If we don't act now, the Zephyrians will create an army that could conquer not just the galaxy, but the entire universe. Authorization granted, Admiral. God help us all. Chen smiled grimly. Ma'am, I don't think God can help the Zephyrians now. The USSC retribution arrived at the Kepler defense perimeter, just as the last Council defense platforms were failing. Captain Elena Vasquez watched the battle through her ship's viewports, her face calm despite the chaos around her. Captain, her tactical officer reported, Council forces are in full retreat. The Zephyrians have broken through their final defense line. Any word from Council Command? They're requesting immediate evacuation support for civilian populations. 17 billion people need to be moved from the core worlds. Vasquez nodded. The Retribution was officially here on a humanitarian mission. That was what the Council had been told. What they didn't know was that the Retribution was humanity's newest and most powerful warship, disguised to look like a rescue vessel. Begin evacuation operations, she ordered, and send a message to the Council. Tell them we're here to help. As the Retribution began picking up refugee ships, Vasquez studied the tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet was massive, easily 10 times larger than when the war had started. Their biomechanical ships had adapted and grown stronger with each battle. Captain, her science officer called out, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the Zephyrian facilities on Alteria Prime. Show me. The main screen displayed sensor readings from the conquered planet. What they saw confirmed their worst fears. The Zephyrians weren't just experimenting on prisoners anymore. They were mass-producing hybrid soldiers. How many? Vasquez asked quietly. Conservative estimate, maybe 10,000 already created, with production accelerating every hour. Vasquez opened a secure channel to Admiral Chen back on Luna Station. Admiral, we have visual confirmation of the hybrid soldier program. The situation is worse than our intelligence suggested. How much worse? They're not just creating super soldiers, Admiral. They're creating an entire hybrid species. Men, women, children. They're trying to replace every species in the galaxy with their own version. There was a long pause before Admiral Chen responded. Captain, I'm upgrading your mission parameters. Authorization code Omega-7. Every human officer on the bridge immediately understood what that meant. The rules of engagement had just changed completely. Understood, Admiral. Beginning Phase 2 operations. Vasquez turned to her communications officer. Send a message to all Zephyrian forces in this system. Full broadcast, all frequencies. What should the message say, Captain? Tell them they have 6 hours to release all prisoners and withdraw from Council space. If they refuse, we will end this war permanently. The message was broadcast throughout the system. The Zephyrian response came within minutes. It wasn't words but actions. 3 of their largest biomechanical cruisers opened fire on a refugee convoy. Captain, the tactical officer shouted. Zephyrian ships are attacking civilian vessels. Vasquez watched as escape pods scattered from the dying refugee ships. Each pod contained families who had already lost everything, now facing death in the cold of space. That's their answer, she said calmly. Begin Phase 3. Ma'am, shouldn't we wait for more support? Vasquez smiled, and for the first time her crew saw something that made them glad humans were on their side. Lieutenant, check your long-range sensors. How many human vessels do you detect in this system? The tactical officer's eyes widened as he studied his displays. Captain, I'm reading 18 ships. But that's impossible. We came here alone. No, Lieutenant. We came here last. The others have been in position for weeks. Across the Kepler system, 17 human ships uncloaked simultaneously. They had been hidden using advanced stealth technology, waiting for authorization to reveal themselves. The Zephyrian fleet immediately changed course to engage these new targets. Their biomechanical ships began adapting even before the first shots were fired, preparing for the energy weapons and kinetic projectiles they had learned to counter. They were not prepared for what the humans actually used. All ships, Vasquez broadcast to the human fleet. You are authorized to engage with full tactical doctrine. Show them why the Council was afraid to ask for our help. The human attack was unlike anything seen in galactic warfare. Instead of energy beams or missiles, they used weapons that turned the Zephyrians' greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The first wave of human ships fired what appeared to be harmless probe devices. The Zephyrian ships easily adapted to these weak attacks, their biomechanical hulls shifting to absorb the energy. That was exactly what the humans wanted. Phase 4, Vasquez announced. The second wave of human ships fired a completely different type of weapon, but by now the Zephyrian vessels had already adapted their defenses for the first attack. They couldn't readapt fast enough. The new weapons tore through the Zephyrian fleet like paper. But the humans weren't finished. Phase 5. Now came the truly terrifying part of human military doctrine. The third wave of ships didn't attack the Zephyrian fleet at all. Instead, they attacked the space around the fleet. Using gravitational manipulation technology, the human ships created artificial black holes that lasted for exactly 37 seconds. Long enough to disrupt the Zephyrian formation, but not long enough to damage nearby planets. The Zephyrian biomechanical ships tried to adapt to the gravitational weapons, but you can't adapt to physics itself. Their vessels were pulled apart by forces they couldn't resist. "Captain," the science officer reported, "the Zephyrian fleet is attempting to withdraw from the system." "Negative," Vasquez replied. "No retreat. This ends here." The fourth and final phase of the human attack was the most devastating. Instead of trying to destroy the remaining Zephyrian ships, the humans used quantum entanglement technology to transport specialized devices directly inside the enemy vessels. These devices didn't explode. They didn't release poison gas. They simply transmitted human music. It sounds harmless, but the psychological effect on the biomechanical Zephyrian crews was devastating. The chaotic creative patterns of human music overloaded their ordered, logical minds. Their adaptive technology went insane, trying to process information it was never designed to handle. Within 2 hours, the entire Zephyrian fleet in the Kepler system had either been destroyed or surrendered. But the humans weren't finished with just this one system. "All ships," Admiral Chen's voice came through the fleet communication system. "Begin Operation Galactic Freedom. Target every Zephyrian-controlled system simultaneously. Across the galaxy, human ships that had been secretly positioned for months revealed themselves. The Zephyrians had conquered hundreds of star systems over the past year. The humans took them all back in 6 days. The strategy was always the same. First, they would demand the release of all prisoners. When the Zephyrians refused, the humans would demonstrate why the Galactic Council had been afraid to ask for help. On Alteria Prime, Captain Park's ship Wanderer led the liberation of the prison facilities. What they found there was worse than anyone had imagined. Millions of beings from dozens of species all being used for genetic experiments. "Get medical teams down there immediately," Park ordered. "And someone contact the Council. They need to see this." The rescue operation took 3 weeks. Human medical ships worked around the clock to save as many prisoners as possible. The hybrid soldiers the Zephyrians had created were freed and offered medical treatment to reverse the genetic modifications if they wanted. Most chose to keep their enhanced abilities, but use them to help rebuild the worlds the Zephyrians had destroyed. Ambassador Kethavar arrived at Alteria Prime 2 days after the liberation. He had come to see for himself what the humans had accomplished. "Captain Vasquez," he said when he met her in orbit, "on behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to thank you for what you've done. Just doing our job." "Ambassador, I have to ask, how did you end this war so quickly?" The Zephyrians seemed unstoppable. Vasquez smiled. "Ambassador, the Zephyrians made one critical mistake. They assumed that adaptation was always an advantage. But humans learned a long time ago that the ability to change can also be a weakness." "I don't understand." "The Zephyrians adapted to every weapon we used against them, but they couldn't adapt to weapons that were designed to exploit the adaptation process itself. We turned their greatest strength into their greatest vulnerability." Kethavar thought about that for a moment. "And the music?" "Chaos theory, Ambassador. Sometimes the best way to defeat a perfectly ordered system is to introduce perfect disorder." A week later, the Galactic Council held a special session to discuss the aftermath of the war. The chamber was packed with representatives from worlds that had been liberated by human forces. Speaker Zolthak stood at the central podium, looking both grateful and nervous. "The Council wishes to formally thank the human military for their assistance in ending the Zephyrian threat," he began. "However, we must now discuss the implications of what has occurred." "What implications?" asked Councillor Yithmora. "The humans have demonstrated military capabilities that far exceed our own. Their technology, their tactics, their strategic thinking, it's all beyond what we thought possible." The chamber fell silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing. "Are you suggesting the humans are now a threat to the Council?" Kethavar asked. "I'm suggesting we need to reconsider our relationship with Earth," the speaker replied. "Perhaps it's time for humans to take a more active role in galactic security."